We take our election seriously, and we believe in election integrity.
My question is, did President Trump bring it up on the call?
Justin, I was not on the call, Caitlin. Stop filibustering. Justin, let your colleagues ask questions. Justin, okay, Justin no longer has a question. Anyone else?
Kayleigh,
Kayleigh.
Okay, from their leader.
Question wasn't
Yes,
my
John.
question wasn't about
John.
that last piece. I just want to clarify one thing, Kayleigh.
Okay, John no longer has a
No,
question.
I do.
Anyone
Yeah,
else?
I do,
I just
Kayleigh.
want to
John.
clarify.
I don't want to talk over it. If you don't mind, Jeff, maybe we can come back to you.
I would like to finish my question.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, but
let
when
me ask you my
everyone in the
question.
front rows get 5
Position that
yes.
it won't impact
Yes.
it won't impact in any way recruitment is what your position is.
Next question. I've
Is that a
already
yes
answered
or
that one
no?
twice.
It's just a yes or no.
I
Kayleigh,
have two questions for you. This morning, Dr. Burke said that it is still an open question how rapidly children under 10 can actually spread COVID-19. But the other day, the president said they don't bring it home very easily and they don't transmit very easily. So shouldn't we figure out which one of those it is before kids go back to school?
So let me give you two answers to this. First, I would point you to CDC guidelines that said based on current data, the rate of infection among younger school children and from students to teachers has been low, especially if proper precautions are followed. There have also been few reports of children being the primary source of COVID-19 transmission among family members. That's where the data currently stands. But that being said, even if there is transmission and later studies come out, let's say, we believe that students should be going back to school because the effect on a child, we know scientifically, they are not affected in the same way as an adult. Again, I'd point you to CDC guidelines on this that says the best available evidence indicates if children become infected, they are far less likely to suffer severe symptoms. Death rates among school-age children are much lower than among adults and far lower than during the H1N1 pandemic, for instance, when schools remained open.
Yeah, and Dr. Burks noted that today, unless kids have an underlying condition, but she said they do not know how rapidly they can spread it still if they're under 10, and that's one of the president's top advisors.
So on the transmission point, I point you again to the CDC, but I would also say that it is our firm belief that our schools are essential places of business, if you will, that our teachers are essential personnel. You all here are considered essential workers, which is why you were coming into the briefing room every day during the pandemic. Our meat packers were meat packing because they were essential workers. Our doctors were out there treating because they're essential workers, and we believe our teachers are essential. Particularly, I pore over the data on schools often, and the one thing that really stuck out to me, I read through the entirety of the CDC guidelines, was that I talk about child abuse often, and 1 in 5 cases being reported in schools. Well, the CDC guidelines went on to say there has not just been a sharp decline in reports of suspected maltreatment, but tragically a notable increase in evidence of child abuse when children are seen for services during the pandemic. For example, in Washington, D.C., Child and Family Services Agency recorded a 62% decrease in child abuse reporting calls between mid-March and April compared to the same time period in 2019, but saw more severe presentation of child abuse cases in emergency rooms. That's a tragedy, and our schools must reopen.
Okay, my question was about transmission rates, but anyway, my second question is also
And I
on the
answered that.
president's call with the Russian president yesterday. Today, the nation's top counterintelligence official said that Russia is one of 3 countries that is actively working to interfere in our election. Did the president bring up election interference on the call with the Russian president yesterday?
Again, I wasn't on the call, but the president, I was not on the call. The president has taken more actions for election security than his predecessor, who gave a stand-down order when he learned about election interference. Susan Rice gave that stand-down order. Obama's intel chief even confirmed that stand-down order was given. By contrast, we've given a ton of funding to election security. We take our elections seriously, and we believe in election integrity.
My question is, did President Trump bring it up on the call?
Justin, I was not on the call, Caitlin. Stop filibustering. Justin, let your colleagues ask questions. Justin, okay, Justin no longer has a question. Anyone else?
Kayleigh,
Kayleigh.
Okay.
around 20 million Americans.
Jeff.
Kayleigh, the president's tone on the virus this week seems to have changed. He's advocated a few different times for Americans to wear masks. He said that the the pandemic would get worse before it gets better. He canceled most of the convention, or certainly the Florida part, yesterday. All of these things were bad 2 months ago, even longer than that, and the science on masking has been clear for several months. What changed this week? Why did his tone change?
There has been no change. The president said on March 31st, before there was even a recommended but not required guidance given by the CDC on mask wearing, the president already said, if you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. It doesn't harm anyone. And that was when our scientists even were, some of them were saying, don't wear a mask. So the president has been consistent on this. He wore a mask back at the Ford facility. He carries around in his pocket. He showed it to you multiple times. He hasn't changed. In fact, and just speaking on COVID generally, the way I've heard him talk privately in the Oval Office is the way he's talking out here. The only thing that changed is the president taking dozens and dozens and dozens of your questions each and every day, because he felt the best way to get information to the American people was for him to be out here answering your questions and providing this directly.
The other part of the question, though, wasn't just about masking, although I would argue that if you look back and see when he called it politically correct, for example, that wasn't exactly agreeing with the science of wearing masks. But setting that aside,
No, but let's not set that aside, because in that incident when he used the words politically correct, it was in reference, I believe you were asking him a question, was it? And right, and you were standing outside and you'd been tested and you were wearing a mask and he couldn't hear your question, so he asked for you momentarily to pull down the mask. So that was the specific context, and context does matter here.
Okay, well, I didn't need to engage on that, but I was standing around other reporters and using the same mic that other people were using. That's why I left my mask on.
Right, well, he could not hear your question. He asked for you temporarily to pull it down. Everyone in the press pool's tested. So scientifically, you were not in a compromising position. But he hasn't changed his tone. But this president, the reason he wants to bring back these briefings is to get information out there. Like, we've done 52.9 million tests nationwide, 187 emergency use authorizations, for test manufacturing, 20 million swabs per month, use the DPA over 20 times. All of these great successes of this administration, like distributing 31,000 cases of remdesivir, enough to treat nearly 200,000 patients. None of this is getting covered. And you've got the best messenger, the duly elected president of the United States, talking directly to the American people and getting extraordinary ratings as they tune in to get information from their leader.
My question wasn't about
John.
that last piece. I just
Thank
want to
you.
clarify one thing, Kayleigh.
Okay, John no longer has a
No,
question.
I
Anyone
do.
else?
I do,
I just
Kayleigh.
want to
John.
clarify.
I don't want to talk over it. If you don't mind, Jeff, maybe we can come back to you.
I would like to finish my question.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, but
let me ask you my
everyone in the
question.
front rows get 5 questions, people in the back row don't even get the opportunity to ask questions.
Just
Thank
that you're
you,
not
Kayleigh.
answering the question.
I want to ask about the Senate Defense Authorization Bill, which passed by a veto-proof majority yesterday, and the House earlier this week also passed their version of the defense bill, also by a veto-proof majority. And both of those bills contain mandates that the Pentagon rename these military bases, which are named in honor of Confederate generals. I want to ask you, does the president believe that his position, which we're all familiar with, it's helpful in terms of recruitment, specifically for African Americans? Explain how that position will help recruit African Americans in an all-volunteer military force.
The president stands with the American people. 56% don't want to see the bases' names changed. Where he stands is in a place where many soldiers who have lost their lives overseas, the last ground that they saw were these bases, and by changing their names, he believes that it is not appropriate that those soldiers who lost their lives to be told that the ground that they
I'm familiar with
left.
his position, and you just restated it very well, but I'm asking you specifically, how is this helpful for an African American who wants to volunteer for our all-volunteer military forces to go to a base that's named for a Confederate general that worked to still put and keep in place slavery, which impacted their ancestors?
Because the bases are not known for the generals they're named after. The bases are known for the heroes within it, the great Americans, black, white, Hispanic, of every race who have died on behalf of this great country. And 56% of the nation agrees with the president.
Your position that
Yes.
it won't impact
Yes.
it won't impact in any way recruitment is what your position is.
Next question.
Is
I've
that a
already
yes
answered that
or
one
no?
twice.
It's just a yes or no.
Kayleigh, first of all, has President Trump determined where he's going to or how he's going to deliver his speech? He said he was working on that yesterday.
So he hasn't decided that just yet, but we have a number of really creative, exciting options that he's looking at. It's a question more for the RNC, but he's very excited about the prospect of what will come with the convention.
And I want to ask you about something that he tweeted back in April. He said Joe Biden wanted the date for the Democratic National Convention moved to a later time period. Now he wants a virtual convention, one where he doesn't have to show up. Gee, I wonder why. Does the president regret that now?
Well, as you know, I can't respond to Joe Biden. You'd have to ask the campaign about that. But the circumstances changed in Florida where we intended to have the convention. As the circumstances on the ground changed, the president changed his viewpoint on having the convention in Jacksonville at that particular location.
I wanted to ask you about the president's phone call with Vladimir Putin. Did the president raise the issue of Russian bounties on the lives of American troops during that phone call?
So as you know, that intelligence is unverified still to this day. There are dissenting opinions within the intel community. I won't get into the president's private discussions with a foreign leader. I was not on that call, but that intelligence is still unverified. But rest assured, our president will always stand with our military and protect them against any and every foreign adversary.
Determination, Kayleigh, about what happened? He's been briefed now, right?
Yes, thank you,
Has
Kayleigh.
anything-
Thank you. Yes, Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell announced that John Lewis
I'll come back to you next.
will be lying in state at the Capitol Monday and Tuesday. Does the president plan to go to the Capitol to visit John Lewis on one of those days?
I have no announcements about the president's upcoming plans, but John Lewis was a civil rights icon. We lowered the flag at the White House here to signify that. So I have no future announcements of the president's plans other than to make that one note. Yes.